So on this call are, I think, everyone from our team, which is great. It's a snow day here in Boston, so we're calling from our various caves. The director of the team is Mike Seaton. Many of you might already know the smiling Mike from implementers meetings and also from doing so much on the reporting framework and supporting developers. There's also Dave DeSimone, who's our business analyst, myself, who is very involved in a lot of the data entry pieces like concepts and forms. Mark Goodrich, who is a tremendous OpenMRS contributor and supports many people, including our team back in Boston. James Mbabazi, who is a Rwandan, worked with our team in Rwanda and currently supports NTB as the implementation manager. And Cosmin Ione, who is a software developer and supports our team with programming, implementation, DevOps, all sorts of great stuff that Cosmin does. This next one is a little hard to see, but what I was trying to do was to show a summary of many of our implementations. And believe it or not, this is a very simplified view. We have probably around 80 servers or something like that around the world. But this kind of gives a flavor of some of those things. The first group in pink are our Haiti implementations, and they range from a tertiary hospital with over 300 beds to a smaller health center, for instance, in Tomant, which is also in Haiti and is a health center. The second one is in Lesotho. We cover 8 rural health centers. The next is Liberia, where we're in a health center there. We also have about 20 health centers and 2 district hospitals in Malawi, 3 district hospitals and about 40 health centers in Rwanda, 1 health center in Sierra Leone, an MDR-TB clinical study in Peru, Lesotho, Kazakhstan, and Ethiopia, and finally a research study in Peru. In terms of the flavors of OpenMRS, they range from OpenMRS old school 1.9 old UI, and that's what we currently have in Lesotho, for example, to OpenMRS 1.10 reference application, which is what we have at the tertiary hospital, and many of our newer implementations in Haiti that we've been working quite hard on. But we also have BOMNI implementations in Sierra Leone, and all the NTB projects are BOMNI. Some of the recent projects, so that's that next column, are covering things like emergency triage at the hospital. I hope we'll get a chance to show this, but I know Mike Seaton did a lightning talk at the implementers meeting this year about that nice module. But we're also working on pathology, specimen tracking, DH-IS2 integration, introducing NCD into our primary care visit notes. But also in Haiti, we're interested in adding fingerprinting, and HIV and VCT into our Haiti software. Currently, all our HIV system is in a legacy system, so pre-OpenMRS. It's a bit of a well-oiled old tank, but we certainly would want to move that to OpenMRS. In Lesotho, we're doing some really great, there's some great new initiatives with DHIS2 integration, adding TB to the system, which currently only tracks HIV patients. In Malawi, Cosmin recently has been working with adding CHW, community health worker, to provider management module, so that can be used to track our CHWs and assign them to patients, along with a lot of work having to do with DHIS2 integration. In Rwanda, we're trying to upgrade to 1.11, introduce billing, integrate our systems with the Ministry of Health, and working with Pentaho for better data analysis. And then in Sierra Leone, we want to improve our clinical functionality. We're currently only doing patient registration in Sierra Leone. So that's kind of in a nutshell some of the multitude at a high level of our implementations. I'm hoping the others on the team can add a lot more information about our development work, specifically with OpenMRS. Dave, do you want to go to the next slide, which is our modules?
Sure.
Mark or Mike, would you like to talk about some of these modules?
Sure. This is Mark. There's not, too much to say here. I just made a list of, we use many modules in the OpenMRS ecosystem. And I think this is a list of all, I believe, all the non-PIH specific modules that we use in our, what we call our PIH EMR, which is our distribution that we use in Haiti and a couple other places. And basically it was sort of the reference app came out of this. So a lot of it is a similar to the modules in reference app, even though I think we have some additional ones. And there may be some, I think we have everything that's in the reference app except for the reference app specific modules. There's a lot of them, as you can see. And we generally, I think we've contributed to every module on this list. There could be one or two we haven't. So we do most of our development in modules expanding onto core, and this is shows you there's a breadth of different modules we work on. So these are all the ones we care about the most. And we're generally running either the latest release version of these modules or even a snapshot version if there's new features that have been released yet. We have a build pipeline going to pick up the latest release version of each module when it comes out. So that kind of gives you a little background of our infrastructure.
Cool. So did we want to demo anything now? If there was something like one of our recent projects that was interesting to the group, we could demo it. I'm not sure what else would be useful.
Yeah, I think I would love to see a demo of something.
Does anyone have any questions about anything that was mentioned so far in terms of the places that we work, or the kind of the kind of development we do day to day, or the kinds of things that are important to us?
Yeah, I mean, I have. We saw some great demos at the implementers meeting of some of these things. I'm curious in terms of, I see DHIS2 integration listed in a 2 or 3 different places, and wonder, is that PIH finding ways to integrate, or is that kind of coordinated with what James Kariuki and Maria, et cetera, have been trying to build?
Yeah, I was waiting for that. I mean, I saw those things on this list too. I mean, I think those are more aspirational. I mean, they're active priorities that we're working on, and we're running DHIS2 internally as our main sort of sort of indicator level data warehouse for building sort of internal dashboards within PIH for M&E and for clinical and programmatic purposes. And so we've really started to ratchet that up across a lot of our sites. At the same time, we obviously have OpenMRS running at those same places, and we want to be able to feed in data into those indicators in DHIS2 so that our M&E teams can build them into their dashboards and whatnot. And so that's something we are actively looking at. I'm keeping my eye on all the different DHIS2 modules in the landscape, and I did speak with James and Maria at the conference and whatnot. My take a little bit, Brooke, is similar to what you wrote yesterday around the GSOC project, which is that it's really hard to get a sense of exactly where things are and what's current and what's out of date, and what modules we're planning on combining and what the sort of future direction is from the wiki. I think I've got a decent sense of it from talking to people, but I think there's some work for us to do there.
Yeah.
I've looked at some of those modules, and some of them I think might meet some of our needs, and some of them I think might not in their current state. And I think we're still trying to get a sense of exactly what we're trying to accomplish and how we might then feed that back in. I mean, most of the things we do at PIH, we try to do in a way that gives back to the community as a generic module when at all possible. So I think you can expect that if we were to integrate with DHIS2, we would not be doing that, broadly in a way that was limited to, our own organization.
Yeah, that's great, I do have that assumption from all the great stuff you guys have done over the years. So, but it's reaffirming to me and helpful to know kind of where you guys are, because I'm trying to push on getting DHIS2 integration to where we're, as a community, kind of focusing on one module, and we're kind of clearing up that conversation. And my hope is that the GSOC project this summer, I mean, what I've laid down with Maria is to really, one of the primary focuses of it is, let's get it to where it's actually useful for people. And so I see maybe Partners in Health as being, a potential kind of product owner of being able to, maybe this is something you'd like to have, but it's not like at the top of your development cycle right now. Maybe we can help influence that GSOC project to kind of get that last mile to like get you, a minimal functional product or something. So,
I mean, we could certainly list ourselves as a project champion for that work. I think. Sorry, my kids are asking me something. In terms of, I've been sort of waffling on the edge of volunteering to try to lead some sort of work like that way, either with GSOC or get more involved. And I just haven't been able to commit the time where I knew that I would be able to actually, follow through on that commitment. So I've wavered on that a bit.
Yeah.
But we're certainly
in this case, I think Maria or James, there's other folks that could potentially, mentor and kind of lead that development, but having an implementer that is saying, hey, this is what we need to actually make use of this. So it's less about mentoring the project and more about being a consumer that's helping ensure that what we're developing is actually useful.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can count us into that.
Cool. Sorry, didn't want to derail the conversation, but that was definitely something that came up in mind.
I mean, one other thing I would say, just about this list as we look at these modules, in case people are wondering. I mean, I think, we got ourselves sort of committed early on in the reference application style of coding. We've got a lot of stuff written in UI framework, GSPs, and we continue to develop in those styles, mostly because a lot of that code is now accessible. There's a lot of reusable fragments, and there's a lot of things that are just easier to do in that framework sometimes. But we are trying to make a concerted effort where possible to develop functionality in ways that is really more of an HTML, JavaScript, REST web service sort of paradigm. Mostly in Angular, still Angular 1, but looking to evolve as well. And so, we're I guess eager to. I guess I just wanted to communicate that that's sort of the direction we're going, and that we do try to build things in a way that is more future-proof than just the UI framework, and you'll see that in a lot of the different modules that we contribute to.
Yeah, and that's great to hear, and it also, it makes sense. You've got a lot of investment into UI framework from Mirabelle on, and so that makes total sense. I hearing that the ThoughtWorks group is kind of leaning toward React, while Ampath is kind of heavily invested in converting their point of care into Angular 2. I think having you guys as kind of at least at the table or in the conversations of where as a community do we want to, if we're going to make some choices in terms of what we are going to support or build in, I think you guys would at least want to be kind of part of that conversation. So I'll make sure that you're included.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. We definitely want to be part of that conversation. And I think we're still pretty new to React as a team. I started looking into it myself just to try to familiarize myself with it, but it's still pretty new. And I think for most of our team, Angular is still the go-to framework because we have more familiarity with it. We have more things already built in it, and so it's just easier to get going. And changing that is something that takes resources and energy.
Yep.
So trying to find ways to make it easy for us to evolve, if that's the direction, I think is going to be important.
So getting back to Daniel's comment, is there something that is kind of the more recent work or things that you've done that maybe either didn't get demoed at the OpenMRS conference or that changed? Is there stuff that is any fun stuff or stuff that's like your latest work that is demoable?
Yeah, I'm not sure if people have seen our newest paperless consult note that we've written for Haiti. If people haven't seen that, that might be interesting to people. A few other things in our Haiti implementations we could demo.
Why don't you run through the Haiti demo server, Dave, and you can show the console, and maybe you can show some of the specimen tracking stuff, maybe, if that's in there.
That sounds good.
ED triage, maybe.
Yeah, let me do that. Okay. You guys can still see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a demo server that mirrors the implementation we have at a couple of small health clinics in Haiti called Timonde and La Colline. And what we built for them is essentially is attempting to be a paperless consult note experience for them. So they have a large paper note that they've been filling out. And we had been doing things like some of our other implementations in Haiti, like just diagnosis capture. But this is an attempt to capture everything they have on their large consult note in a way that's essentially user-friendly. So let me show you how the basic workflow works. So once a patient is registered, I won't show that. They can be checked in. So I don't think this is that different than some other implementations using the reference app. Check the patient in. You choose the type of visit. Outpatient. You choose the amount that they pay. And you can put in a receipt number if they're given a receipt. So once a patient is checked in, they automatically show up on this queue that we've built for vitals capture. So essentially the patient walks from the check-in desk over to the vital station, and there should be a list of patients there, and the vitals nurse just chooses the next patient off the list. In this case, there's just the one. And then the vitals is filled out for that patient. Okay. So the patient's been removed from the queue. And then the next thing that happens is they get put on a different queue that is brought up near the consult rooms in the clinic. So a doctor that can then choose this patient off the queue for people needing consult notes. And they can click begin consult. And this brings the user to the essentially the visit dashboard, which shows everything that's happened in the visit so far. Just they've been checked in and they've had vitals. And they can choose between these different types of consult notes. So in this case, I'm going to choose a pediatric initial visit just because it has the most stuff in it. Essentially, the most forms that we've built are in this note. So what it does is it opens up or it lists all the forms that need to be filled out for this one encounter. And the first one is essentially just the header, and I'll go into edit to show you, which just, you can confirm that the provider and the location is correct. And I'm going to go out to the visit dashboard again. You could go through these sort of piecemeal, just picking off the ones that you wish to fill in. Or what you can do is you can just edit the first one and it'll bring you through every note. So the first thing is they retype the chief complaint because a doctor might have a different point of view for what the patient is complaining about.
Oh, it doesn't show the...
No, and there's actually, this is something that we added recently, and I think we still need to work out exactly how the chief complaint that captured at vitals, if it at all works with this. But we originally had it captured at the vitals, but they decided they would rather have it captured during the consultation.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense. I thought you were capturing it at vitals, and then that might be shown to the provider, and then they're allowed to enter their own.
No, we talked about that, but they said the doctor would just rather make his own assessment. So the next thing is any vaccinations. So this is this shows a history of all the vaccinations that have happened. This is modeled after the Haiti's Ministry of Health schedule for vaccinations for children. So what you can do is you can add plus to add a dose. And if it was given during the current consult, you just can click save, and it shows that it was given on that date. If it was given on a previous date, you can enter in the date. And like I said, it shows these are all from previous encounters. Next. So this is supplements history. So the next few sections are just content that we're gathering that was based on the Haiti combination of the Haiti's ministry and the Haiti PIH consult note. The next thing is the allergies, which brings you into the allergy section just in the OpenMRS reference app. So people are probably familiar with this. This is just the normal allergies module. So this is the patient's history. You can type a history of the present illness, family history, any patient history, use the patient's blood type, and then
And Dave, these are all implemented as HTML forms, right? That's how the layout is determined and whatnot. Is that correct?
I think so,
That's
Mark.
correct.
Right? Yeah.
That's correct.
Right. And then we just capture previous hospitalizations, medications, and diagnosis test history as a free-form text.
So what we've tried to do here in this note is to leverage the existing form entry technologies that we're already using everywhere else, and then to build those into a user interface that's more conducive to point of care data entry and paperless system.
Yeah. Cool. And I assume the bulk of these are generating observations.
Yes.
There's some I think the allergies section that you saw is interacting with the allergies table, Mark?
Yeah, but I think it's just, it's not even an HTML form. It's just, it actually is a widget provided by there might be a display widget we rated custom, but a lot of it might just pull stuff from the allergy UI module itself.
Right, but we were able to have different types of content here. Some HTML form backed if it's a standard observation-based form. Some could be other widgets that are backing the table.
Yep.
And I assume that the paradigm here is that if you hit save, it takes you back to the list of forms, and next is stepping through.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So you can see what's been filled out because it lists a little summary, and then you can continue where you left off, or you can skip ahead to something else.
And are all of them required, or all of them optional, or is there a way that you can specify, to complete this encounter, you have to have these 4 things? The others are optional.
Yeah. So the only kind of concept of a completed encounter that we have here is because it's saving the encounter as you go along, but on the queue page, and I can show you this. There is a here I'll show you. We have an option for in consultation, and so this is anyone who started the note who hasn't actually specified a disposition yet. So that's kind of our only concept of a completed note, that a disposition is given, whether or not the patient was discharged or admitted or whatever.
So for the most part, are all of these things in a single encounter, or are those multiple encounters within the visit?
It's a single encounter, or everything within the PEDS inpatient is actually a single encounter, and each of the forms edit parts of that encounter, which is sort of something, a paradigm we've come up with that just happens to work, that is convenient for doing that. Because you can, if you open an encounter, it'll only show the things that are on the form. So literally, you can have 5 forms all feed to the same encounter.
So these are the the top level, PEDS, inpatient, outpatient, vitals, and check-in. Or those would be the encounter?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
And are you saving the data to the database as the user is?
Yeah, as you go along,
working.
it's updating.
So are you creating any observations in the process?
Yeah.
I guess so. Does that mean they're getting voided and recreated every time you're going through editing things in the note?
That's a good question. I don't think so, actually. I don't think it's even touching them.
It shouldn't void and recreate them unless they are actually being changed.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry?
No, I think that what Wycliffe was asking is if you, say, went back into the history and edited something, then the default behavior would be as if you update that observation, it would void and recreate one.
It uses whatever HTML form entry does. And I know that we've seen some behaviors in OpenMRS that might void things unnecessarily or whatever, but we're not explicitly trying to not void things and edit them in place.
Yeah.
And the behavior isn't that it's voiding and recreating things unnecessarily, as far as I know.
But the observations are getting created. Like right now, there's observations in the database halfway through the form.
Yeah, there's no concept of like a draft form or something like that.
Okay.
So I'll just quickly go through the rest of this form. These are just additional observations. So this exam form is a little bit different. We have all the types of exams on the left, and so you can just choose which ones you would like to fill out.
This is basically using the simple UI paradigm that's provided by, there's some navigator functionality in the UI Commons module, and then the HTML for Entry UI module. It offers the ability to open forms in this format or in the standard UI format.
And our folks tend to be using desktops, or are they using tablets?
They're using desktops, laptops. In the hospital we have, they have like thin clients, but they're essentially like desktops.
But they have keyboards.
Yes, they have full keyboards. We have tested it on tablets. It does generally work, although we don't have any. The UI is definitely not optimized for any mobile devices, but it does work. I hit save instead of next. Diagnosis.
So Mark and Dave, one thing to maybe to cover while we're doing this is sort of to what degree this is something that is available to, say, the reference application as an alternative user interface, or any of the aspects that we built on, or how much of those things are specific to the PIH distribution.
So I guess, unfortunately, nothing's that specific, but it's all in the PIH core module. So there would need to be some harvesting of that if somebody else wanted to use it into another module. This whole visit node format and the thing that renders all this is pretty generic, but in the PIH core module wrapped around other stuff. And the forms, of course, are all backed by concepts that we install, but they're generally, Ellen does a good job of making sure that they're tied up with seal, so they're probably things other people could use too. So
yeah, I don't mean the actual forms and content. I mean more just the actual the framework that you can plug forms into is whether that's just communicating a little bit, like if people saw this and said, we really like to be able to have this available for our distributions or the reference application, how much work would it be to make that happen?
I think it would need to be harvested out of the PIH core module. So I don't think it'd be a ton of work. Those things always seem to take more work than you think, but the concept in general, I don't think is any PIH or implementation specific concepts built into it. I think when we started building it, it was just easier to build it within the PIH core module, and at that point, it's kind of where would it go within the reference app framework. But I think if people want it, I think it's doable.
Okay, thanks.
So we gather the patient's plan. So free
it's
text.
Also, sorry, I don't. Did we talk about it's generally Angular based? Is what the kind of how this whole. I don't know if I missed I might have wasn't listening at the beginning if you mentioned that. But that's kind of what it's a Angular based visit note that then. This page here is just opening an HTML form, but the main page, all the list of encounters, is Angular based and generally works on by fetching things via REST and then ties into the
and
old
it should be. I don't know if this doesn't seem like I might be doing it. Maybe it is, but it's worth noting, I guess, that there are ways where you can actually retrieve an HTML form and render it using web services, or at least using JavaScript, right?
No.
Well, there is, because I do it in another module.
Okay, well, this doesn't do it.
So we gather. Sorry.
This is basically it's basically deferring to the old school way of the HTML form entry module at the end basically does the rendering of the form, or the HTML form entry UI module, which kind of throws some stuff on top of that. But it's actually pretty similar to the old school way of rendering it.
Okay. We do gather lab tests and medications. They don't, we don't have a lab module or a drug module or something that these tie into at this point. These are just observations, but we do capture them. And also, bottom of the form, we captured the disposition, patient was discharged, and you can enter in a return visit date. That's basically the, so this is what the note looks like when it's filled in. We do have a print function here. It essentially just opens up the form and prints the whole thing for if you would like to sort of file patient summaries at the end of the day on paper, which sometimes they do.
And actually, this reminds me, this is to Mike's point. Some of the stuff here, if you go back, these are examples of what Mike was saying, where we're rendering forms via REST calls. When everything is embedded in this page is generally, I forget exactly how all of it works, but there's different levels of fetching data from form entry via REST.
Each of these forms can be expanded or collapsed, either one at a time or all at once.
And is this, are the orders, I don't know what version of the platform under the hood you have, but are the orders stored as orders?
No, they're just observations.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 110, and there's no, in this layout, there's no orders.
Okay.
Yeah.
We are working on a lab tracking module that will use orders, but that's a whole different story.
Yeah. So yeah, that's our consult note. I can switch over to show our the lab tracking module, which is still in progress, or I can show the emergency triage module, whichever people are interested in. Any thoughts there?
I wanted to find out, how do the patients get to the queues? I saw some sort of queue somewhere.
Sure. So essentially, when there's a patient is checked in, check in this patient. They show up on the vitals queue. So we have a workflow that's check-in, vitals, consult note. So once a patient is checked in, they automatically show up in the vitals queue. And I think this list is just looking for a completed check-in encounter within the last, what is it, Mark? I think it's the last 48 hours. So it's any check-in encounter in the last 48 hours without a vitals encounter.
So the queues are kind of virtual, like they're dynamic, and not.
Yeah,
it's not like you created a separate queuing system that manages it.
It's just a query. And what Dave said, I think it's a little more complex than that, but that's generally what it is.
Right.
Checked in, but no vitals encounter within some time period.
Yeah, and similarly, once there's a vitals encounter, they will show up on the consult queue, which again just looks for like a vitals encounter in the last, I forget exactly how many hours, without a consult encounter. And again, if they're in consultation, which is, they've started the consultation encounter without a disposition being saved, they'll show up on the in consultation queue. Otherwise, they'll show up in the waiting for consultation queue.
Cool. Could we say, let's take a look at the lab tracking module. I'm mindful of we have about 15 minutes left, and like to.
I'm swapping over to a different demo server,
Okay.
And this is something that we're building for our hospital in Haiti, for Mirabelais Hospital. So this is a slightly different implementation. You can see there's much more options here. I'm going to pull up a patient dashboard. I'm going to check them in here just so that they have an active visit.
as Dave's describing this, just to say, just a little context that, I mean, we've been doing, you can see on the right-hand side here, there's some oncology consult, oncology intake consult. We are getting, more and more requirements coming through for oncology, specifically for our Haiti implementation. And we've done a lot of work on oncology in Rwanda as well. And this sort of lab tracking app that Dave's going to show was being built for the oncology team for pathology specifically. We're trying to make it more generic than that, so we can use it for sort of any kind of lab sample we need to track. But just for context, in case others are interested in oncology and the requirements around it, that's the context.
Right. So right now it's really just actual pathology tracking more than a generic lab tracking. And you'll see that in the forms. So if I click order lab, which again is really ordering a pathology test, you can type in the diagnosis. So, and this is, I think, brings up a subset of all of our diagnoses that are related types of cancers. And then you can, the doctor, so this is something the doctor would do when they're in consult with a patient and they decide that they would, something that they've seen requires a pathology test. So then they request the actual procedure to be done, which might be a specific type of biopsy. You can order multiple ones. You can type in a non-coded procedure to be requested, inpatient or outpatient, and there's any instructions or any clinical history that might be relevant. So the part that hasn't been built yet, like I said, this is in progress, is we would like to build the widget here on the clinician dashboard to show that there's been a pathology test that's been ordered and to update, the status of that right here on the dashboard. That hasn't been built yet. But what we do have is a lab tracking app here. So when I click into it, I see a list of all the pathology orders that have been made so far. So this top one is the one that I just made. That's today. And right now there's like no details. If I click details, there's just, I think it's just the request information. But if I click enter, I can enter the specimen information. So this is what would be done after the procedures are done. And it's essentially to update the system that the procedure's been done and that the sample is being sent out to the lab for testing. So you can fill in who the surgeon was, who the resident was, anyone to notify. These are the procedures that were requested. And if for some reason an additional one was done, or if one of these wasn't done, they can be updated here. You can specify that it's urgent review. Again, it brings over the post-op diagnosis and clinical history from the order that can be updated here. And then this is where they would give the details of the specimens that have been collected. One, two, whatever. You can save that. Or you could, if you saw there was a print button from within the form, that's the same thing if there's a print here. This was broken. Okay, so it's working now. That's good. So this essentially just prints out the details of the specimen. This is what they use to actually send to the lab. They print it out on paper and send it along with the specimen to the lab. And then, so then that goes to the lab. The results come back. And the way our workflow is working is we actually get the results from the labs that we work with in the form of a PDF file. So when the results are entered, you can put the date of the results, any notes that maybe might accompany the PDF. And then this is where you can actually upload the PDF here.
Is that stored as like a complex OBS?
Yes, right. Mark?
Yeah.
Yes. I can give a little technical overview when you got to pause, Dave, about the whole thing. But
That's basically it. So yeah, so
that
if
was thanks to the work that was done recently, right, on the adding complex job support to REST. Thanks to everyone that worked on that.
I think I'm not even sure. Joe managed to figure it out on his own, so I'm not. He used that and some stuff from the Widget Documents module, some hints he got from there.
Yeah, so that's basically it. So this page, you can filter on different on a specific patient, different statuses, or different date ranges. You can update, or you can even just like download the PDF with the results PDF from here. That's basically what we have so far. And like I said, the only thing that's really outstanding is the part on the patient's dashboard where it's going to show a summary of their pathology work, if they have any.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that our contractor worked on this for us. A guy did the Triage for us. It's been really good. It's been a good, as you can see, most of it is it's a standalone Angular app that there's the link on the homepage and then goes into the different lab tracking pages, but it's pretty disconnected from this clinical dashboard you see here. There are a few hooks into it. And so it's worked pretty well because Joe he's gotten up to speed on OpenMRS pretty quickly in general, but he's basically built all this functionality, this app in Angular using REST connections to the back end OpenMRS. And then we're going to pull in a few hooks like the link here to the order lab, and then Cosmin and myself is going to work on adding the other page to the dashboard, the other element here to the dashboard that shows the
section
order.
is
the section.
Yeah. The are you going to approach that as just like an active order section, or are you going to make it specific to like is it because it has to draw from lab tracking, it'll be like a lab tracking section?
That's a good question. I think it will be, the idea is there's an order type of lab order, right? Test order. I think there's a test order type. So I think it would show all test orders. And I think the idea is, right now the only test orders we have are this pathology ones, but the idea is that hopefully this whole module and that thing could show all test orders.
Yeah, it's interesting because you have pending radiology orders, which
except for radiology orders. Yeah. But radiology orders you're right, they're an actual subclass of test orders. So it would be all test orders beyond radiology orders. That's a good point.
Right.
And radiology orders are they actually are special. There's a radiology order object, so there's a little distinction there. But it seemed like most other tests would generally fall into the same pattern of you order something, you take something from the person, whether it be sputum or blood or a biopsy, and then you report on it, which, radiology is the same kind of thing. But
we do have a special workflow for radiology orders in that it integrates with a PAC system that's at the hospital.
Right.
Well, I'm mindful of we have about 5 minutes left. I think we could easily fill 2 hours talking about all the awesome things that PIH is doing. There's a handful of questions I've been typing in the notes. Some I don't know that we got to were like, I know, noting what you guys are doing with the encounters and the, there were really two questions around that. One was, is there any plans or wish for having draft encounters, or are you guys kind of satisfied with the way things work there?
It's something we talked about, not recently. So, I guess, if they existed, we'd probably consider using them, but there's definitely nothing on the horizon in terms of building that functionality now.
And how about the kind of having a visit with the number? I think discussions about those, and I think
you're totally breaking up, Burke, for me. I don't know if other people are hearing you.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're breaking up.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I think I had discussions before I remembered having discussions with Mike or Mark about the kind of workflow you have around encounters, and how that was very similar to what Regenstrief had done with saying, okay, a visit can have, multiple parts to it, and that allowing people to either walk through a workflow of those or do them kind of ad hoc. But that model of saying a visit has these kind of components to it, maybe eventually being able to say if there's dependencies between them or if they're required. I think that's maybe future work, but I wonder in terms of what you've done with your visit and having a set of encounters that are kind of, having the the metadata of these are the encounters that belong in this visit. Is that something that is we might be able to harvest into the reference application?
I think I'm forgetting now exactly how it's. I don't think we do too much with that, Mike. Well, I guess I'm the one the most about it.
I was going to say the same. I mean, I don't know what there is to harvest from that personally, but I was going to defer to Mark.
Well, I mean, clearly, for a visit of this type, there's these encounters.
That's not true, because if you go back, Dave, can you bring up the visit dashboard?
Well,
sure, the dashboard.
But isn't there a template that says we expect the following things in this order for a visit?
Yeah, I mean, you've got next buttons. What a next button has to know where to go to.
But that's right now. I guess it can have different encounters now, but that's all within. Like, for instance, what happened here, Dave? Oh, you're on the wrong server, right? We're on the same server.
Sorry, they're not different encounters, but you have a template.
Like the check-in and the vitals that you saw there are part of the visit, but they're not part of that template. So it's all the things that are listed as subcategories, which is probably what you're talking about. But just to be clear, here.
Yeah, when you do the adult initial outpatient, the chief complaint, allergies, history, all those forms.
Yep, are tied together. But
how are they associated with the?
So yes, you can do that. It does allow that support, and that is something that can be harvested. Right now, remember, all those are backed by a single encounter. But I think that was a change we made later on. So I think you could use it. There is support in this visit note format to have multiple encounters.
Burke is not asking about single versus multiple encounters. The question is, what is this template thing? Because you haven't actually described that. But there's clearly a template here. So what is it?
It's an Angular-based app that you can. It's an Angular-based app that you can define what falls under that adult initial outpatient.
And is that still sort of basically a JSON file?
Yeah. Or JSON or JavaScript. JavaScript as well.
I mean, obviously, because we're saving the encounter as we go through these different sections, I mean, it makes it, and there's no draft encounter. I mean, it makes it hard to really enforce like required fields.
Yeah.
In a meaningful way.
Yeah, and it's not so much that, it's just that notion of there's a natural kind of metadata of, yes, we have visits, we have encounters, we have forms that can be filled out and contribute to encounters, but we don't necessarily anywhere store the metadata of here's kind of the, whether it be the default or the you must fill it out, or avoiding whether things are required or not, just the information of these are the forms that are associated with this encounter and maybe in order or preferred order. And clearly you've represented that somewhere, and that seems like it would be a common paradigm.
Yep. No, it's definitely it's basically in JavaScript. You can set it up via JavaScript.
Okay. Well, we're about out of time. Let's see if any of these are. I wanted to make sure there's a couple things that you touched on that are other folks are working on, or I know there's other discussion going on, and just want to make sure, like, for example, that you know about the encounter diagnosis effort going on to make encounter diagnosis kind of a first-class citizen of encounter. So just like observations or
design call on Monday for that, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just want to make sure you're aware of that. And the other one is that I know there's a lot of discussion right now going on between John Black and folks at Ampath about trying to develop. John Black is trying to work both for Uganda's system, but also kind of really Eastern Africa, trying to create an oncology-based solution. And it seems like you guys are doing a lot of oncology-specific things. He's looking at Mike, your order set module, and they're right now talking about, well, let's make sure we get concepts and make sure that they're in seal. And I can't help but wonder if you guys have already done that work, or if there's any communication happening between what you guys are doing around oncology and what John Black and JJ and
Yeah, I
Chite
mean, I did talk to John Black in Uganda, and I definitely, it was not lost on me that we should be collaborating more. I mean, he's right next door from us in Rwanda as well, and I do think he did talk to Todd, I believe, from our IMD team, and I don't know, Ellen may have spoken to him or
Okay.
exchanged
Well,
emails with
just
him. I can't remember.
I exchanged emails with him.
okay. Just an FYI, and I'll try to maybe pull that in again. But I know we're working with John Black right now to help him successfully submit a grant. I think it's like an NIH grant to develop an oncology solution on top of OpenMRS, and so you guys may be interested in being related to or participating in or influencing that effort. So we'll try to make those
that
connections.
could make a lot of sense. I mean, let's definitely pick that up offline.
All right. Yeah, and we didn't get to the classic questions that I always like to ask about. You guys obviously have been involved with OpenMRS from the start as co-founders, and so it's a little different, but I always like to ask the question of like, how is, from your perspective, how is working with the OpenMRS development community going? Are there things that you would prioritize in terms of the way we do work that could get better, or that you'd like to see changed, or like where would you put your top 3 wish list for the OpenMRS developer community to take on?
Nothing like leaving that question to 4 minutes past the hour.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't have a good answer to that prepared, and I would.
Okay. Well, let me do this.
What I would say though, Burke, is I think just Mark touched on the fact that we had someone, a consultant who came in sort of cold to this work, help us out with the ED Triage app, and now with the lab tracking module. And he was able to not only get up to speed really quickly and start building really nice apps using nothing but our web services that we have already published. He wrote a couple custom ones that he needed just to consolidate some things, but mostly just writing client-side code, not really knowing anything about the OpenMRS sort of domain or history, and also was able to ask questions on Talk and get answers back from a variety of people not on our team, within minutes and hours. So, considering like my own personal, history of how well that kind of thing tends to go, I'm really impressed with how far we've come and how easy it was for someone like him to come and be productive and contribute and get the support he needed from OpenMRS. So I just wanted to say that I think we've come a long way, and it's great to see it progressing that way.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And do you know, did he use the SDK?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll have to ask Mark.
I would love to hear the answer to that. Well,
I think I had him use it. I think for the ED triage, maybe not, but I believe I had him use the SDK for the lab tracking.
Well, given that we've kind of gone over time-wise, maybe what I can do with that question that I kind of threw at you, Mike, would be, I've recorded this. Hopefully, we'll be able to capture it and get it up on YouTube, and then I'll post to Talk. Let folks know they can catch up on it, and then ask you those questions on Talk, so you can take your time.
You could even ask Joe what he thought of the SDK on Talk, so he can answer and we don't have to.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. Yeah, can you ping me or put in the notes or somewhere Joe's OpenMRS ID?
Yeah.
I bet if you search on Talk for Joe Web Services, then you'll find it.
Joe Web Services. All right. Thanks, folks. Sorry for running a little over, but like I said, we could easily fill 2 hours with PIH stuff. We have a update from Uganda and Uganda EMR next week. So thanks, folks, for joining, and hopefully we'll see many of you on next week's call. And between now and then, we'll see you in cyberspace.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.